A glass of water, completely clear, no smell, no taste, no visible contamination, and the only thing that made it that way was a piece of burnt wood pulled from a campfire, crushed into powder and packed into a tube made from a plastic bottle. No filter cartridge, no electricity, no subscription box delivered to your door. Just carbon, just char, just something humans have been making by accident around every fire they've ever built, for as long as fire has existed. And somewhere along the way, we forgot that we knew what to do with it. This is activated charcoal filtration. Not the kind you buy in a capsule at the pharmacy. Not the expensive block filter inside your countertop system. The raw, primitive, make-it-yourself version that has been used to clean water on every continent in every era of human history by people who had no access to anything we would recognize as modern technology. The kind you can make tonight in your backyard with wood and a metal container and a fire. The kind that costs essentially nothing and works well enough that the entire modern water filtration industry quietly built its most expensive products around the same core principle, and then made sure you never thought to make it yourself. Here's what's actually happening when charcoal touches contaminated water, and why the scientific community has been studying and validating this for over 2 centuries. In 1822, a French pharmacist named Bertrand publicly demonstrated that charcoal could adsorb enough arsenic trioxide to prevent poisoning by swallowing a lethal dose of the poison combined with charcoal and surviving. In 1831, a pharmacist named Thury repeated the demonstration before the French Academy of Medicine, swallowing 10 times the lethal dose of strychnine mixed with charcoal and walking out of the room unharmed. The medical establishment was stunned. The military took notes. And the water treatment industry, when it emerged in the industrial era, built its first large-scale municipal filtration systems using exactly this principle. The city of Ham in England installed one of the first charcoal water filters for public use in 1829. By the early 20th century, charcoal and its refined descendant, activated carbon, had become the backbone of water treatment infrastructure worldwide. It was never secret. It was never fringe. It was foundational. And then it got expensive, got branded, got packaged into systems that require proprietary replacements. And the original free version quietly disappeared from common knowledge. You already know this works. You've seen it in action without realizing it. The Brita filter on your refrigerator shelf, the one you replace every 2 months for $12, contains activated carbon as its primary filtration medium. The undersink reverse osmosis system your neighbor spent $800 installing has an activated carbon stage. The water filtration straw you'd buy for $35 at an outdoor supply store is, at its core, a tube packed with carbon particles. Every premium water filtration product on the market uses some version of the same material that a person living 4,000 years ago could make from a fire and a clay pot. The technology didn't advance beyond charcoal. It just found increasingly elaborate and expensive ways to package it and sell it back to you. The reason this knowledge quietly left mainstream consciousness is not complicated. There is no business model built around telling people they can make an effective water filter from wood ash and a discarded plastic bottle. Nobody profits from that knowledge being widely understood. The water filtration market generates tens of billions of dollars annually on the premise that clean water requires purchased technology, cartridges, systems, replacements, certifications. The moment the general public genuinely understood that the core mechanism inside every one of those products can be replicated at home with fire and wood and basic materials, the entire premium tier of that market collapses. So instead of being taught in schools alongside basic survival skills, instead of being included in every camping guide and emergency preparedness pamphlet, instead of being the first thing every person learns when they think about water safety, it sits in history books and academic papers, quietly waiting for someone to pay attention. They stopped teaching this, not because something better replaced it. They stopped teaching it because teaching it costs them customers. The science is straightforward and satisfying once you understand it. Charcoal is what happens when wood burns without enough oxygen to fully combust. Instead of turning completely to ash, the organic material partially converts into nearly pure carbon, a material with a microscopic structure that looks, under an electron microscope, like a vast three-dimensional maze of tunnels, chambers, and surfaces. A single gram of high-quality activated charcoal can have an internal surface area equivalent to several tennis courts, all of it packed into a particle you can barely see. When contaminated water passes through or sits in contact with charcoal, dissolved chemicals, toxins, heavy metals, chlorine compounds, and organic contaminants are attracted to those carbon surfaces through a process called adsorption, where molecules physically bind to the surface rather than being absorbed into it, the way a magnet attracts metal filings. The contaminants stick. The water passes through. What comes out the other side has had a significant portion of its chemical contamination physically removed. This is not filtration in the way a screen filters particles. It's more like a chemical trap, a surface so large and so reactive that contaminants have nowhere to go except to bind to it and stay there while the water moves on. Now let's build the filter. The materials are genuinely humble. You need a plastic bottle. A 2-liter soda bottle works perfectly. You need charcoal from a wood fire, not charcoal briquettes, which contain binders and additives that contaminate the water rather than clean it, but pure wood charcoal made from hardwood burned in a low oxygen environment. You need coarse sand and fine gravel, both of which can be sourced from any stream bed, construction site, or hardware store. You need a small piece of cloth or cotton fabric, and you need something to punch a small hole with. Start by cutting the bottom off your plastic bottle. This open end becomes the top of your filter where the dirty water enters. Invert the bottle so the cap end points down. Punch a small hole in the cap, or remove it entirely and cover the opening with a layer of cloth tied in place. This is your outlet, where the filtered water drips out. Now layer your filtration media inside the inverted bottle from bottom to top, remembering that water flows downward through each layer. First layer at the bottom, closest to the outlet, fine cloth or cotton folded twice to prevent fine particles from passing through. Second layer, about 2 inches of fine sand. Third layer, about 2 inches of your crushed charcoal, pieces roughly the size of small gravel, not powdered. Fourth layer, about 2 inches of coarse sand or fine gravel. Fifth layer, another piece of cloth at the top to pre-filter large particles before they enter the system. Pour your dirty water in at the top. Watch it work its way through each layer. Collect the output in a clean container below. The water that comes out will be visually clearer, significantly reduced in chemical contamination, and dramatically better than what went in. And then, critically, you boil it or use solar disinfection as a second stage to address biological contamination. The filter handles the chemistry. Heat handles the biology. Together, the system is complete. Here's what most people get wrong, and why their homemade filter disappoints them the first time. The single biggest mistake is using the wrong charcoal. Charcoal briquettes from a bag at the grocery store are manufactured with coal dust, sodium nitrate, limestone, starch binders, and sometimes lighter fluid compounds. Running water through them doesn't filter it, it adds contaminants to it. You need pure wood charcoal made from untreated hardwood, oak, hickory, maple, fruitwood. Make it yourself by packing wood tightly into a metal container with a small vent hole, burning it over a fire for 2 to 3 hours, and sealing it to cool without oxygen. What you have is genuine wood charcoal with real adsorptive properties. Second mistake, using charcoal that's been ground too fine. Powder-fine charcoal compacts and blocks flow, creates channels where water bypasses the media and passes through into your filtered water, making it gray and unpleasant. You want pieces roughly the size of small pebbles, crushed, not pulverized. Third mistake, expecting the filter to work as a single-stage system for biological safety. This filter removes chemicals, heavy metals, chlorine, and turbidity. It does not reliably kill or remove all bacterial and viral contamination on its own. The filter is stage 1. Boiling is stage 2. Skipping stage 2 and assuming the charcoal filter alone makes water safe to drink is the mistake that gives this method a bad reputation when the problem was never the charcoal. It was the incomplete process. Fourth mistake, never replacing or regenerating the charcoal. Charcoal has a finite adsorptive capacity. Once the surface sites are fully occupied by contaminants, the charcoal stops working and can even begin releasing bound compounds back into the water. In a short-term emergency situation, this isn't a concern. In a long-term setup, you need to replace or regenerate the charcoal regularly, which you can do by heating it in a fire to burn off the adsorbed material and restore the surface area. The old knowledge knew this. The modern product knowledge built it into a replacement cartridge schedule and charged you for it. The results of a properly built and properly used charcoal filter are remarkable for something made in a backyard from fire in a plastic bottle. Studies on DIY biosand and charcoal filters conducted by humanitarian engineering organizations show consistent removal of chlorine, sediment, color, and organic compounds that cause taste and odor issues. The WHO's guidelines for household water treatment specifically include charcoal-based filtration as a validated method for improving water quality in resource-limited settings. In field deployments across Cambodia, Rwanda, and Nicaragua, simple charcoal-based household filters have reduced waterborne illness rates by measurable and significant margins in communities where no alternative infrastructure existed. Scaling the system is straightforward. Larger containers, more charcoal, higher flow rates. A 55-gallon drum converted into a charcoal biosand filter can process enough water for a family daily with minimal effort and materials that cost almost nothing in most parts of the world. Address the real safety questions, honestly, because they deserve honest answers. Can this filter make water completely safe to drink without boiling? No, and anyone who tells you otherwise is overstating the method. Charcoal adsorption is a powerful chemical treatment, not a complete sterilization system. What it does reliably is remove chlorine, many heavy metals including lead and mercury in significant quantities, volatile organic compounds, pesticide residues, industrial chemicals, and the compounds that cause taste and odor problems. Combined with boiling or solar disinfection, the two-stage system produces drinking water that meets or approaches safe drinking water standards using zero purchased materials once the initial setup is complete. Can you use any wood? Hardwoods produce better charcoal with higher carbon density and greater adsorptive surface area. Softwoods work but less effectively. Avoid any wood that has been treated, painted, or chemically processed. The treatment compounds survive the charring process and contaminate the charcoal. Is there any risk of the charcoal itself adding something harmful to the water? Pure wood charcoal from clean, untreated hardwood adds nothing harmful. The carbon is chemically inert. The adsorptive surface only takes, it doesn't give. Go back 3,000 years and this knowledge was simply part of what people knew. Sanskrit medical texts from ancient India, written roughly 2000 BCE, describe filtering turbid water through charcoal as a standard practice for improving drinking water. Ancient Egyptian medical papyri reference charcoal as both a medical treatment and a water purification agent. Phoenician sailors stored drinking water in charred wooden barrels on long voyages. The interior surfaces kept the water from becoming foul over months at sea. They didn't know what adsorption was. They didn't have electron microscopes to see the surface area of carbon. They just knew, empirically, through trial and error and passed down observation, that burnt wood made water last longer and taste better and made people less sick. The Japanese practiced a water purification technique called binchitan, using a specific high-grade charcoal made from oak that is still sold today as a premium water purification product for hundreds of dollars per stick, when the principle it operates on was being used for free by sailors and healers and ordinary people for millennia before anyone thought to put a price tag on it. Which brings everything back to the same uncomfortable place. We live in a civilization that has taken knowledge developed over thousands of years of human observation and experience, stripped it from common education, packaged its core mechanisms into proprietary products, and convinced us that we cannot access clean water without their technology. Not because their technology is better than the underlying principle. It isn't. It's just more consistent and convenient. But because knowledge that empowers people to solve their own problems is knowledge that doesn't generate recurring revenue. The charcoal in your water filter was figured out by people who lived in deserts and forests and sailed wooden ships across oceans without GPS or supply chains. They didn't have a hardware store. They had fire, they had wood, they had observation, and they solved the problem completely. What we have is the same solution with a logo on it and a subscription renewal date. If this video changed what you see when you look at a piece of burnt wood, if it made you realize that the most fundamental human need after air is something you have more capacity to address yourself than anyone has ever told you, then share it with someone who still thinks self-sufficiency requires expensive gear. Because the fire is still the same fire, the carbon is still the same carbon, the knowledge was always yours.